Hello and welcome to our second video in our series on angles. I'm Mr. Chowdhury and today we're going to be looking at angles and in particular turns. So if you haven't already watched our first video on measuring angles, I suggest you do that first and then come and have a look at this one. So here's your first question that I'd like you to look at. There are some triangles here and they're all congruent. Now congruent means they are exactly the same. So all of these 5 triangles look exactly the same. What I'd like you to do is pause the video and try and tell me how to work out angle B. So not only do you want to tell me what angle B is, but also how would you work that out? So hopefully that's giving you a chance to have a go at this question. So let's go through the answer. So here I've drawn one of the triangles that are in the question and we're going to fill in the angles that we know. So I know that one of the angles is 72. So one of the base angles in this triangle is 72 and the other one is 80. So I've written those in. And then that means the missing angle, the top one in my diagram, the smallest one, is B. So how would I work out what the value of B is? Well, first thing I'm going to do is add the 2 base angles together. So 72 add 80 equals 152. And then I'm going to subtract that from 180 because I know that angles in a triangle sum to 180. And once I've done that, I'll get the value of B. So hopefully that's the answer that you got. Moving on. We're going to be looking at angles around a point. So this is where you'd pause the video and you can tell me, what do angles around a point sum to? What do angles around a point sum to? Pause the video and have a guess. So angles around a point sum to 360. And here's a diagram that we can see it. So angles at a point sum to 360. We can think of this also as angles in a full turn sum to 360. So if I'm doing a full turn, they will sum to 360 degrees. So here's something we need to practice. So what do A, B, C, and D sum to in our diagram? What do A, B, C, and D sum to in our diagram? Pause the video and have a think. So let's have a look at this answer. The answer is 360 degrees. And that's because A, B, C, and D are all around this point here in the middle. Also, you can look at it as this is a full turn. So if I turn through A, and then I turn through angle B, then I turn through angle C, and turn through angle D, I've done a full turn, which is 360 degrees. So here's another question. True or false? Pause the video. What do you think? So if you said false, you are correct, and that's because there are 2 90 degrees here. So we've got 30 add 50 add x add 90 won't equal 360 because we're missing one of the angles in there. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 angles, but we've only accounted for 1, 2, 3, 4 here. So that is false. Okay, what about now? True or false? Right, now this is true because we have a 30-degree angle, a 50-degree angle, x, and then a right angle here denoted by the square, and then a right angle here denoted by that square. So that's 30, add 50, add x, add 90, and that should give us 360 because that's our full turn. Well, that's the angles around this point in the center. Right, one more. Does x equal 100? Pause the video. What do you think? If you said this is true, that is definitely correct. So we know 4 out of the 5 angles that we're given. So what we can do is we know x is going to be 360, which is the sum of our angles, minus 90, minus 90, minus 50, minus 30, and that will give us our remaining angle. And also, just to double check like we did last lesson, this angle x looks obtuse and 100 degrees is obtuse, so we can say that, we can roughly say that's correct. Right, moving on. So if angles in a full turn add up to 360, what do you think angles in a half turn add up to? I'll let you pause the video and have a think. Okay, so hopefully you've had a chance to think about that. And you can see that angles on a line sum to 180 because a line is pretty much a half turn. a line is pretty much a half turn. So it's not going all the way around a point or going all the way through a turn. So if a turn is 360, half of 360 must be 180. So angles on a line must sum to 180. So let's have a look. What do you think A, B, and C sum up to? Is this statement true or false? Pause the video, have a think. So hopefully you've had a think about that. The answer to this one, A plus B plus C, is true. It is summed up to 180 because they are on a straight line. A, B, C are on a straight line. So if I turn through A, then I turn through B, then I turn through C, I would have done a half turn. So I would have done 180 degrees of turn. What about this one? Is A plus B 180? Pause the video, have a think. The answer is false for this one. And the best way to think about this is if we were to move angle B, so it was adjacent to angle A, so it's right next to angle A, like that, we can see that we're missing an angle here. So they wouldn't add to 180 because if we turn through A and then just turn through B, we wouldn't have done a 180 turn. Okay, what about this one? Does A plus B plus C plus D sum to 180? They are all angles on a straight line, so they must sum to 180. What do you think? Pause the video. Have a guess. If you said false, you are correct, because if we have a look, we can see that if angles A and B, if I turn through A, then I turn through B, those two add up to 180. It wouldn't be possible for A, B, C, and D to add up to 180. That would be impossible. So the last thing we need to do is just quickly go over what we mean by turns. So we have learnt some rules about angles and we've learnt some things about turns. So we know that a full turn is 360 degrees, and we know that angles around a point or angles that make a full turn sum to 360 degrees. We know that a half turn is 180 degrees. So angles on a straight line must sum to 180 degrees. Adjacent angles on a straight line must sum to 180 degrees. And lastly, the one that we can work out is angles in a quarter turn must be 90 degrees because a quarter is a half of a half. So if I'm doing a quarter of a turn, I'm only doing 90 degrees because that's what half of 180 is. Now hopefully that's helped you and you can go off and do some questions from Mr. Amerson, or if you're feeling really confident, you can go on Dr. Frost Corbett Maths and practice answering some questions about angles. Try and do as many as you can, and that will help you with the basis before you move on to anything new. Go off, be productive, and I'll see you in the next video.